and congratulations on what I think is probably both of y'all's first film, Qotzuñi.
That's right.
Yes, it is. It is. It
Yeah.
actually is.
So, and I just got to say, first of all, this is a beautiful film. I mean, I was totally taken away by how you were able to encapsulate this culture, the what has happened to the lake, with the salt and everything. What was really interesting to me is that so many people know about the lake in Bolivia. They know it as the Salt Lake, but what I don't think they know about is the Uru people that it's affected and how it became that way. What made you want to tell this story?
Well, first of all, I think you're absolutely right that people know about the salt flats in Bolivia and people even know about Lake Poopó. However, so we even came to the story wanting to tell a story about a lake that dried up because we heard about the second largest lake in Bolivia and how it was completely empty. And so we wanted to tell that story about a body of water that disappeared and maybe how that related to mining and climate change. But when we arrived, we met the Uru authorities and we realized that this wasn't a story about a lake, but it was a story, of course, about the people on that lake. Not only is it a beautiful cultural story, but I think what we found is that audiences resonate with the human connection much more than they would just an environmental piece. And understanding how a loss of an ecosystem also reflects to a loss of a culture is one of the best ways to communicate the damages of climate change, in our opinion.
Yeah, it's
Absolutely.
it's not just their source of sustainability. There was a hunting and fishing community, but it's like their whole culture was like totally connected with the lake, and that's why this story is so relevant for us because it's a strong connection between human and nature, you know?
Yeah, no, and it actually creates a world that feels both specific and universal. And I'm curious to know what were the non-negotiables for you from the beginning? Like what was the one thing you said if we're going to tell this story, what is our main purpose? What do we have to get through?
I think that the first thing and the most important decision that we made in this film is not adding any outside experts, not adding, much more information that what they told us. Like, not like expanding beyond what they're the experts in this and they're the ones that feel it the most. And so we had a bunch of interviews and we made that decision once we were there, like we're not going to add anything that they don't tell us because that's what we think that it's most important, that it's giving the platform of a short film to amplify their voice. But also we worked in very, very close collaboration since the very beginning with the maximum authority at the time, which you have right next to your ear, Florencio, that he was like, okay, who can we interview? Where can we go? And should we talk to? So that was kind of the stepping stones to make this story, that it wasn't us saying, oh, we want to do this, this, and that, but really being open to listen what they want to share.
Absolutely. And so he was the first character who kind of really unlocked this story for you. He
So, in terms of unlocking the story, we of course had to meet with the authorities and the people in the community before we ever started filming. Right? That's such an important, I think, component of documentary filmmaking. It's establishing trust with people whose story you're seeking to amplify. So it's not just we say, "Hello, my name is Michael. My name is Gaston. Tell us your story." Right? That's not the best way to do it. So Florencio and the other authorities definitely kind of unlocked that, uh, what the story might be by also telling us who was right to interview. But as we realized we were editing, it was Rufino, who's the first person seen in the film, who really he opened up to us. He allowed us into his home. We actually stayed in his home. He showed us a museum that he keeps of artifacts of even taxiderm waterfowl to sort of remember the Uru Qotzuñi culture. And he was the first person who really kind of laid it all out to us. And when we were editing, we realized he had to also be in the film.
And was there a moment when the emotional direction of the film shifted because of something unexpected, perhaps something you experienced while living with him, or just something that happened along the way?
I think that the most important moment is the last scene of the film where we went with the Uru communities of Puñaca, Tinta Maria, which was one of the three villages. We drove like to the middle of the lake, like an hour and a half on search of there's sometimes with the rain there is some water, but we couldn't get further because the car kind of sinks if not. So we stopped right next to their abandoned boats. Like it was their own boats. It wasn't like just random boats in the salt flat, but it was literally Florencio's boat. And there was like, I think that a really, really specific moment where Florencio gets on the boat and says, "Hey, could you take a picture of me? Because I don't know if I'm going to come back here. I don't have why. And this is my boat. I used to work with this boat and this was my life." And now he works in the very same mines that stole the lake. So it's like, that moment when he said, "Can you take a picture of me here?" Because that kind of opened, the possibility of the other members getting into the boat, and they kind of organically built the picture that we think that represents the film the most. That it's that the Urus, they keep rowing although there's no water because they want to maintain their traditions, they want to maintain their culture and their essence, as Florencia says, as people of the lake.
Absolutely. And you can see how they've, adapted their artistry and, used that to, kind of prolong that culture. I'm curious, what does Kotsuni mean to you as filmmakers? Like when you hear, as a title, as a concept, as an emotional anchor.
Well, I think that's a fantastic question. I don't think many
No,
people
we
have
never
asked
had
that,
it. Wow.
but I'm really glad you did because to me, one of the most important components of the entire project is that last line that we're all people of the same lake. And so
Yeah,
that to me, what Kotsuni means, and of course, not to over abstract, this is very much, a real community who needs help, and we're trying to bring that impact as well. But I think to any audience member who's watching the film, I want them to also take away, how can I reconsider my own connection to the natural world around me? Whether we're here in LA, where does our water come from? Because it's actually quite a similar story to the Urus in Owens Valley. Or, I'm from New York and Buenos Aires. We really need to consider how we are connected to our environment. I think that's the first step in understanding our own complicity and also our role in being part of the solution to environmental damage and helping maybe the most vulnerable communities as well.
Yeah, and for me, I think that it means like Kotsuni is one example of many films that we could do about communities that are affected by climate change and human overdevelopment. And I think it's a very, very strong example, a visual piece that it's impossible to deny. It works as an antidote against denialism of climate change, but it's also just one example. It happens all around the world, in California, in Argentina, and in Asia, Africa, Europe. It happens all around the world. And with this story, we like our main goal is to transfer, the film success that we were really grateful to show the film in over 19 countries. But we really want that to make a material change in this community and set the floor for next projects with similar topics, because there's so many communities that suffer really similar water related issues like the Urus. And this is kind of, well, our first film, and I hope it's not going to be the last that address this type of problems that we have in the world, and also exploring, the connection between humans and nature. And with this message that it's not that the lake dried up for the Urus, it dried up for us too, for you, for everybody, because it's part of the same world that we live in. So kind of that's what Kotsuni means, to me. But I think that it's something that we talk a lot because that this story has like a lot of layers that are not just in the 13-minute film. Because imagine that it's a picture in time, it's a fragment in time where the oldest people lived their whole life with the water there. And the youngest like never seen the water in the lake. So it's like a really important moment and a story to tell, not just for the Urus, but for the whole world.
And was there any challenging balancing the personal elements of the Urus with the larger socio-political context, of climate change? Did you have any challenges with that?
Yeah, well, the film, it's not overtly a film about climate change, right?
Right.
And I think that maybe that's important in a certain way because if we came in and said, look how climate change destroyed this lake and destroyed this culture, on the one hand, I think we would be overlooking the role of mining and agriculture and diverting the water, and that's a completely different um, cause of the lake's disappearance. But also, I think it might alienate some people who say, this is just another story about climate change. It's happening far away in Bolivia, and we don't need to care about it. And I think that's where the personal component is so important. Have people telling their own stories that they're the people of the lake, and it's not just the lake that disappeared. I think it's what draws people in. And the 13-minute film, maybe it doesn't answer every single question that you might have about a massive lake that disappeared. But it really is like the emotional hook to get people to say, oh my goodness, I empathize with these people and I want to learn more. And then we have more information on our website, qotzuñi.org. We have a whole virtual museum. We have a whole impact project. And I think starting off with that emotional and human connection is really the most important thing to get an audience.
Yeah, and also it's like this thing that a lot of people say, oh, it dried up because of climate change. But sometimes we say climate change like something really far, but like is human overdevelopment that causes it in a big way. So it's kind of a really complex system which everything is connected, the mining, the pollution, the diversion of waters, the severe drought, and all that comes together to shape the story of this community that lived on the lake for millennia. So it's something that is happening right now, and that we hope this film is works as that evidence.
I think it absolutely does. And I mean, it's just done so exquisitely and beautifully and shot so beautifully. Is there one shot or sequence in particular that you feel most encapsulates the film's soul?
I think that the easy answer is to say the last shot where the people are rowing with no water, but I'm gonna change that and say the first scene that where we chose to put the boats and the emptiness, and where and there's also a phrase that we read in a school on the board, and we said like, oh, that's incredible, because they really want to keep their essence and trying to present this place like a really empty and quiet area where there's a lot of peace, but not so much, because you can't see maybe that problems, but there's nothing left. There's no water left. The boats look like skeletons. They're like lying down. So I think that that kind of first scene is something that was also one of the first things that we filmed, and kind of was a start point for the narrative of the project before presenting the people of the lake.
Yeah, and your direction, blends kind of realism with heightened cinematic choices. Do you want the audiences to feel like witnesses, participants, or something in between?
I think in different parts of the film, we want the audience to, feel like each of those things. So, there's the big drone shots at the beginning, which we were lucky to get because the drone actually
Yeah.
crashed on that first day or the second day. Um, so in that case, we really want to show the scope of this massive lake, and it's people of a lake, but where's the lake? It's kind of mysterious at the beginning, and you maybe want to feel like you're from above looking at this entire landscape. But then at other points of the film, it's all handheld, and it's really at physically at the level of the people, but we also want it to be emotionally at that level too, to say that, we are there with them and that we are also people of the lake. And especially that scene where there's the kind of ritual at the end, right before that poster frame that's behind you, where it's Felix Mauricio, Cipriana, Florencio, and Pablo, that they're going around the lake and really in silence. They're walking around and you can feel that emotion. And we left that silence because we wanted to honor kind of the space and where maybe there would once have been, the sounds of water in a massive lake. Now it was just completely silent. So we really wanted to kind of make that empathetic, kind of level-headed emotion as well.
Yeah, and I think it's when you watch this film or many other films that kind of show things that are really happening around the world, you can't look, you can't make in your head that you haven't seen it. So now you're a witness, that, and that's happening in Bolivia. And I think that's something very powerful of I would say a little bit more with the witness, you know, like kind of giving people that watch it the responsibility of knowing that that's happening around the world. And it's, you know, and it's happening. It's not just because lakes are drying out around the world that that's true, but this is also related with, you know, fires, floods, and many other issues and climate related issues or human related issues. I don't know. You could say that too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you look at Brazil, you look at the mercury going in the water from the mining. It's all we're all one big ecosystem, and it's important that we remember that we're all part of this one thing, and we need it all. We need to all work together and united to make it work. I'm interested about that you spoke about the drone crashing and what was the single hardest day of production for you both, and then what did you learn from it?
I think, well, from a technical standpoint,
Yeah.
this is a very honestly, it's a very windy landscape. So being able
Yeah.
to capture some of the audio, especially some of that much more quiet and subdued audio, in that scene I was talking about before, was very technically difficult. Because we wanted to, the little things like picking up the dead bird, right, and kind of moving it around with his hands. We wanted to capture that audio and not recreate it afterwards. So, trying to do so in a kind of slightly hostile weather
And with
climate
almost
landscape.
no equipment. Like it was me with one camera and a lens, and Michael with the directional recorder and the headphones. Yeah. So it was like but I think that's also one of the things that made us do it the way we did, that we were like kind of under equipped and really lightweight, so we could move very fast and like really adapt to what the community kind of needed. And I think that the most difficult day there's one shot that we make like a before and after, and it was like the whole day for that shot that we were looking for to make that, you know, before and after to make that fusion and looking for that mountains. And I don't know if it's pays off at the end, but it was that the kind of the most difficult day looking for
Yeah.
that specific spot to kind of show this how it changed in the last years.
There was actually a point where we were trudging the two of us through this lake bed because it's kind of muddy. So there's this like salt, hard crust, and then beneath that it's mud. So we're knee deep, kind of trying to walk in this lake. I guess they had to get on my shoulders to take a picture. It was a little bit ridiculous, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there seems to be a lot of logistical challenges and they seem significant. Was there any moment when you said we thought like the film may fall apart and what held it together after that?
I don't think that I ever had that thought because we we were really dedicated to crafting a film or a story with whatever we were able to capture in that moment. So we were going to be able to adapt, I think, to whatever the story told us, because that's what documentary filmmaking is about. You never know what's going to happen. You never know what the story is going to be when you start filming. And so as we started talking with different people, the story was changing and our method was changing too.
Yeah.
And so I think that no matter, what challenge would have come, we were always prepared to find
Yeah.
a way to
And
do it.
also, it's not that like we weren't just doing the film, we were also doing documentary photography project on my side and also investigation thesis on Michael's side. So we were kind of like multitasking and having a lot of things in mind that it wasn't like all the eggs in the same bag with the film, you know, like it's kind of the whole scope of the project that we were like most focused in sharing this story in the best way that we could, and giving the Urus the possibility of express themselves in the best way possible in the better places as possible, showing uh their daily life in the most, um impactful way, because it's not the first time that they've been in front of cameras. So they were like really helpful, and it was a really close collaboration of where to film, what to film, why to film.
And Kotsuni seems rooted in, a culture and a worldview that isn't often portrayed on screen. How did you ensure that the story remained authentic and respectful?
I think that Well, we literally ensured it with in writing. So we met with the all of the heads of household and authorities of the
Yeah.
Urus in their, I think, monthly meeting. So I presented myself and I said, this is why we want to do this project. We want to learn about your connection with the lake, and hopefully through a documentary we can bring the story to the world. And I think that resonated with them. So we drafted actual, papers that we signed to say that this is going to be a collaboration between the two of us, or the two of us being our team and the community. And at every step of the process, not just the filmmaking process, but also post-production and distribution and after, which is the impact campaign, this is going to be a collaboration. So, of course, like we've mentioned, the filming process was very collaborative, but then afterwards, with some of the success of the short film, with the DocNYC win, and with all the awards campaign, we go back to the community, especially with our local impact liaisons, and try and design impact initiatives with the Urus. So it's not that we say, okay, now that we've raised this amount of money, this is the project we're going to do in your community. No, we say, what would be the best? What would you guys want if we could potentially raise these funds?
Yeah, and they also like they're really happy that we screened all over the world, but that's not what they're really, focused in. It's like how does that change my daily life? Like so that's kind of the focus in our relationship with the community that we talk in WhatsApp every like really really often to keep them updated, but also like this is worth when it has its biggest value when it actually changes something down there in Bolivia. And that's why we developed this six-stage impact campaign to address food security because now the soils are contaminated so that they can't plant themselves, plant anything or food. And then you have like sustainable economic development for what I told you before that the men have now to work in the mines. So we're like trying to fund these family businesses to develop these alternatives and resilience acts, and also, local activism, culture resilience, and a couple of more things that we designed together with the communities and with our local impact coordinator and some local organizations that work with it. And so that's how kind of we maintain this essence of the project and not lose it for example, with all the award stuff and everything, it would be we see that as the best way to amplify the story and to trying to make more change in the community on the ground.
Absolutely. And were there any collaborators in particular, other than the Uru community themselves, that were essential in shaping the film's message? Or the
Definitely.
most
So
essential, maybe?
Yeah, Theo, right?
yeah, there's two groups on the ground that are separate from the Uru community, but are advocacy groups that do environmental law work. So one is called CEPA, which is the Centro de Ecología y Pueblos Andinos, and the other is Fundación de Pueblos Montaña, which is run by Teo Blanco Moyo. And that group was really instrumental in connecting us with the Urus. They also do popular action lawsuits on behalf of the community against the city government, which often contaminates the waters. Also, mining companies that are private and illegal mining operations. And so they're also helping us develop these initiatives with the community. It's really crucial to have a local coordinator. Maybe they're not Uru themselves, but they understand the region. They understand the culture
Yeah,
of
they work with
Bolivia.
them a lot.
Yeah, far longer than we have, right? So they've been doing it for many, many years. So it's really, really key to have that
Yeah, it
collaboration.
wouldn't been possible if we didn't have this kind of intermediary that helped us get there. And it's not that we just appear to the community like an Argentinian and an American filmmaker that say like, "Hello, we're here to make this story." It was that it's really, really important for this stories to have somebody that they know from before, that they trust, and they work in order to trust us after.
Yeah, absolutely. And the music and the sound, the soundscape almost feels like a character on its own. How did you approach the music and sound design to reflect the film's emotional landscape?
So the music itself was composed by a regional artist named Carlos Carti, who does traditional pan flute and percussive music. And we asked him to take some of his compositions and try and map them best to the film. And actually, one of the main songs is called um, from the shores of Lake Titicaca, which is actually a bit of a coincidence, but I really feel that there's something to the essence of a lake. And so Lake Titicaca is a much larger lake that feeds into Lake Poopó. They're part of the same
Yeah,
system.
they're connected.
Yeah. And so I do think that there's something, maybe in a slightly spiritual way, that the music that came out of, Carlos's connection to Lake Titicaca, because that's where he lives, really resonates when trying to tell the story of Lake Poopó, which is also connected to Titicaca. And so in developing the sound design of that score, but also kind of trying to show the silence and the emptiness of the landscape, it was really important to give that space to honor the emotions of the community as they kind of navigate that silence now, in the absence of the water. And so I think where the music is playing is it's very important to bring that spiritual emotion, but where the music is not playing, it's just as important to give that space and let it breathe.
And what do you hope audiences will carry with them after watching it?
I think that is this reflection of what is our relationship with water and with also the human overdevelopment, and what are the costs sometimes, that we don't see them every day, of having this huge industry developments. It's like, who are the people that pay that, that pay that cost? And I think that that's at least on my side, and also the power of storytelling and filmmaking to actually make a change. Um, it's something that, you know, this is a little bit more than the film, the project, the whole impact project itself. That is the short film is clearly the engine, but to make like actual change in the world, and that is that we're all people from the same lake. I think, it's the last message, and we thought a lot about that message, and we say it a lot because we really believe that we there's sometimes a lot of disconnection in this world of saying, oh, this is happening so far away, why should I care about? But it's not that far away because we're all part of the same ecosystem. So I think that's what I would like the audience to take away.
Yeah. And on a more specific level, we of course want people to ask, how can I be part of the solution here? Like literally with Lake Poopó in the Urus. And so that's why we've developed the Impact Project. And in order to learn more and maybe, be part of that campaign, anyone can go to our website at qotzuñi.org, where we have an entire, stage by stage impact project that anyone could contribute to and be a part of as well.
And if you could ask the audience, one question after screening, what would it be?
I think it would go back to, what is your lake, right? What is the one thing
Yeah.
in the natural world around you that really feeds your spirit and your culture and your personal identity? Because, for any different person in any community, it could be something different. We screened, for example, by Lake Superior, and the audience was like, wow, like we have this massive lake. It probably won't disappear ever in our lifetimes, right? But imagine if it did. Or, whatever is that center of your identity, what would happen if it disappeared and how would that affect you? And, how can we use that to empathize more with communities far away?
Yeah, and on that line, I think we did we're launching, well, it's about to close a photography contest with the theme of we're all people from the same lake, and like with the goal of exploring what's worth protecting and what's your lake and what's home to you, like the Urus are, their essence and their identity is 100% defined by the lake. They call themselves people of lake. Okay, so what does it mean for every person in the world? Like what's our lake? What's our home? What's our main source of cultural identity? And that's worth protecting. And how can we protect those stuff?
And what's something about the film that's no one has asked you yet, but you wish they would?
Well, Landon, you actually asked us a few questions no one has asked before, so we
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
But not too many folks tend to ask about about the biodiversity that was also lost. I think that's a really important thing. Of course, it's so important we want to tell the human story, but there's also a massive ecosystemic loss here. That there are 35 species of waterfowl, of flamingos, of eagles, and different birds that lived on this lake, and there were many fish and other organisms that have also been lost. And I think that it's also just another part of this devastation. When you look at the scope of what's been lost here, it goes past the people, and it's also in the nature as well. It's always something we like to talk about as well.
Yeah, and also something that people ask, but it's not in the film, and I think it's really important is this part that now this paradox and this, situation that the men have to work in the very same mines that like caused this disaster. So kind of what's that situation now? That is something, Florencio, the maximum authority of the whole Uru community, works in the mines. And the mines, it's like they're private mines, public mines, cooperative mines. So it's like a really structural problem. And this is an example that we talk a lot about what's worth protecting. And this is like, okay, what happens when it's already gone, and using this as that example, like what are the solutions, but not in terms of getting the water back, but looking forward and how can we adapt and also mitigate, but adapting to the reality of this era that is we're living with a climate crisis.
Absolutely. And do you see this kind of as a one-off or the beginning of a larger creative path that you guys want to explore?
Yeah, it's definitely not a one-off, right? We've been
Yeah.
mentioning, there's communities like this everywhere in the world. And so we want to use this project as a kind of model or a template to say, look what we were able to do with frankly very few resources on the production side. And now with the success of the film, we're hoping to be able to step that up in the next project. But what we've been able to attract from the international community in terms of resources on the back end of this project has really, I think, been very impressive in terms of the impact that's been happening on the ground. So we want to say that a 13-minute film really does have that power, especially when the story is so urgent and pressing. And we want to take it, across the world, not only us making those films, but, helping people tell their own story, right? If we're doing workshops in different communities, to let people, make their own films, tell their own story, and be part of that change.
Yeah, also we're trying to give grants in the community that could be also to tell their own stories, storytelling, and trying to, um, look filmmaking as a tool to actually make change. And this is one community. There's so many that have such similar situations that we really want to work with those projects to try and to bring this material change and trying to connect people around the world. I think that that's what film does. Like you listen to this person and you wouldn't. I don't know. I wouldn't ever have heard about the Urus that they're right in my neighbor country. I'm from Argentina. I'm really close by, and I never heard about them. So how this film, obviously for me, that I've been working on it, but for all the people that are really close by that never heard about it, to not look away and to really think about what's happening in Bolivia and all around the world.
And what is the call to action? I know you spoke about the website, the impact campaign, but and what is your lake personally? But what's the call to action here? What would you like to tell people how they can get involved, how they can help?
Yeah, there's a number of ways to help, and we're doing grassroots fundraising in order to support some of these projects, funding the family businesses, providing food staples, also food security, infrastructure, school supplies. And one way to contribute is by literally contributing to that fundraising, and that can be found on our website. But of course, not everybody can do that, and so I think sharing the film, following it on social media, and also trying to relate to that universal message is just as important, because hopefully that's going to start other projects like this across the world.
Yeah, and I think that opening, our hearts and agendas to watch these stuff, it's a big call to action. Like there's a lot of, films that address similar topics. Well, for example, yeah, Yanuni, that is the other film that it's kind of up for this year. That it's a similar, topic related Indigenous Latin American situation and people and environments at risk, and opening our hearts to watch these stuff in depth and really embrace them and try to see what we could help, and not just talking about it, that I think that it's really important, but also listening about it, everybody a little bit more, that sometimes we forget that these things are happening until we get and sit in the screening room. So it's trying to make people watch and talk and share about the stories.
Yeah, not just this story, but all kinds like it. Yeah.
Exactly. It's not just us.
Because unfortunately, there's no ministry for indigenous people for, lakes that have dried up. So it's definitely on us, to be united and to see that we are all part of the same ecosystem.
Yeah, I mean,
Exactly.
it's also a very difficult time for documentaries and environmental documentaries, specifically. And so I think being able to listen to these projects and watch them and show the world that there is a place for them, I think it's really key.
Absolutely. Well, what's next for you guys?
Well, yesterday we had our last scheduled screening of the season. We'll see how it goes. We're available in the Academy screening room, and waiting to see how that goes. But also really, really happy of having the possibility of doing all of this after winning Doc NYC last year. That opened up a huge door of sharing the film to wider audiences. So we're putting our efforts in the global impact, but without leaving apart the local impact. That once that all this award stuff finish, we have a lot of, we have this three following stages of giving the grants in the community, keep on funding family businesses. We're doing a book, we're developing a virtual museum for the community and hopefully other communities around the world. We're also doing this photography contest as a call to action to everybody to think about it, with a cash prize together with Earth Alliance.
We'll be visiting the community again in January to
Yeah.
do another community screening and hopefully some workshops. Um,
And a lot of future projects like this. This is our first film. We're really grateful to have the possibility of being with a film where we are right now. And I think that, in my personal opinion, that's a big responsibility of all the things that we learned and all the things that we did with this film to transfer that into next films and make them as impactful as we can.
All right. Well, thank you so much, guys. Like I said, it was a beautiful film. You absolutely got your story across in 13 minutes, which is very remarkable. I really think this is going to open hearts, open eyes, and make a huge impact. So I really can't wait to see what you guys do next. And congratulations again.
Thank
Thank
you
you so
so
much,
much.
Lennon. It's really a
Thank you.
pleasure to chat.
Absolutely. And enjoy the rest of the award season. Enjoy your holiday, and hopefully we'll see you soon.